The flames rise against the black January sky like a funeral pyre on the water. It is 3 hours past sunset on January 13th, 1840, and the steamboat Lexington burns 4 miles off Eaton's Neck on Long Island Sound. The fire starts in the casing around the smokestack, a small problem that might have been extinguished with quick action. Instead, it spreads to 150 bales of cotton stacked carelessly near the stack. The cotton ignites like gunpowder. Within minutes, the entire freight deck becomes an inferno. Passengers scream, crew members throw buckets of seawater onto flames that laugh at water. The ship's paddle wheel churns at full speed because no one can reach the engine room through the fire. When crew members try to launch the lifeboats, the first boat gets sucked into the spinning wheel and shattered, killing everyone inside. The other 2 boats hit the water stern first and sink immediately. By midnight, passengers and crew jump into the frigid water to escape the flames. The temperature is below freezing. The water temperature is 38 degrees. Those without something to cling to die within minutes. The Lexington burns until 3 in the morning, when what remains of the hull finally slips beneath the surface. Of the 143 souls aboard, only 4 survive. 139 people die by fire or ice on a January night in Long Island Sound, and the disaster remains the worst maritime catastrophe in the history of these waters. But to understand how 139 people die aboard one of the most luxurious steamboats on the northeastern coast, we must go back to the birth of steam navigation in American waters. In the 1830s, steam power revolutionizes transportation. Cornelius Vanderbilt, a ferry captain who starts with nothing, builds an empire on steamboats. He commissions the Lexington in 1834 from the Bishop and Simonson shipyards in New York. The ship measures 207 feet in length and weighs 488 long tons. Her hull is carved from a wooden model shaped by Vanderbilt's own specifications. Her engine, built at the West Point foundry, uses a walking beam mechanism powered by a 48-inch steam cylinder with an 11-foot stroke. She is one of the most efficient vessels of her time. The Lexington enters service on the New York to Providence route in 1835, then shifts to the New York to Stonington run in 1837, connecting passengers to the railroad line that continues to Boston. She is fast, she is elegant. Her decks feature ornate teak railings. Her cabins boast luxurious furnishings. Her dining saloon rivals any fine hotel. Tickets are expensive, but passengers pay for speed and comfort. The steamboat revolution means a journey that once took days by sailing vessel now takes hours. Commerce accelerates. Fortunes are made. But this speed comes with invisible costs that accumulate like pressure in an unmonitored boiler. If you find this story compelling, please consider subscribing. These forgotten disasters deserve to be remembered. The dangerous system at the heart of the Lexington is her boiler. Steam power requires heating water to extreme temperatures under pressure. The boiler must withstand enormous internal forces. Any weakness in design, any failure in materials, any operator error can lead to catastrophe. The Lexington's boilers are originally designed to burn wood. Wood burns at lower temperatures than coal. In 1839, the ship's owners decide to convert the boilers to coal burning to save money. Coal is cheaper. Coal burns hotter. But the conversion is done improperly. The casing around the smokestack is not redesigned to handle the increased heat. The stack runs through the freight deck, where cargo is stored. There are no fire barriers. There are no automatic shut-off systems. The crew must reach the engine room manually to stop the engines, and if fire blocks that path, the paddle wheel continues to turn at full speed. The ship's design prioritizes elegance over safety. The beautiful teak paneling, the curtains, the furniture, all highly flammable. The ship carries only 3 lifeboats for 143 people. Many life preservers are not accessible. Fire buckets go missing. The ship's fire engine is a small hand-pumped device that requires crew members to stand close to the flames. It is inadequate for any serious fire. These design flaws exist in plain view, yet nothing is done to correct them. The hidden dangers multiply in ways invisible to passengers boarding at the Manhattan Pier. Small fires have occurred before due to the overheated smokestack. Each time, crew members extinguish the flames. Each time, they report the problem. Each time, nothing changes. The ship's owners calculate that repairs cost money, and small fires that get put out do not justify expensive modifications. This is the arithmetic of industrial disaster. Short-term savings weighed against long-term catastrophe, where catastrophe is treated as an abstraction until it becomes blood and smoke. On the night of January 13th, 1840, the weather is cold and the seas are rough. The crew burns extra coal to maintain speed. The smokestack glows red-hot. The wooden casing around the stack begins to smolder. At 7:30 p.m., First Mate notices smoke. The fire has already started. The crew's first action is not to fight the fire immediately, but to go below deck to check the engines. This delay proves fatal. By the time they return with buckets and the hand pump, the flames have spread to the cotton bales. Cotton, compressed and dry, burns with a heat that nothing can stop. The fire doubles in size every minute. The crew cannot reach the engine room to shut down the boilers. The paddle wheel keeps turning. The ship speeds forward at 8 knots, creating wind that fans the flames into a roaring furnace. What do you think could have prevented this disaster? Share your thoughts in the comments. This pattern of failures is not unique to the Lexington. Steamboat disasters plague American waters throughout the 1830s and 1840s. On April 22, 1830, the steamboat Chief Justice Marshall bursts its boiler while leaving the dock at Newburgh, New York, killing 11 people. On May 8, 1837, the steamboat Ben Sherrod catches fire on the Mississippi River during a race with another vessel, killing 175 people. On April 25, 1838, the steamboat Moselle explodes near Cincinnati, killing 150. Each disaster follows the same pattern: design flaws, cost-cutting, ignored warnings, inadequate safety equipment, untrained crews. After each disaster, newspapers call for regulations. Congress holds hearings. Committees issue reports. Nothing changes. The steamboat industry resists regulation as an infringement on commerce. Owners argue that competition will drive safety improvements, that the market will punish companies with poor safety records. But passengers cannot assess the condition of a boiler or the adequacy of fire equipment. They board based on price and speed. The market does not punish negligence until after people die, and even then, the punishment is rarely severe enough to change behavior. The Lexington's owners purchased the ship in December 1838 for $60,000. They operate her for 13 months before she burns. In that time, they make back their investment many times over. When she sinks, they lose a ship, but they face no criminal charges. No one goes to prison. The economic incentive structure encourages risk-taking. The community aboard the Lexington represents a cross-section of northeastern society in 1840. Among the 143 passengers and crew are merchants traveling to Boston on business, families visiting relatives, workers seeking employment in Connecticut's growing industrial towns. The ship carries Adolphus Harnden of the Boston and New York Express Package Car Office, transporting $18,000 in gold and silver coins and $80,000 in paper money. She carries the Reverend Carl Follen, a noted abolitionist and radical minister originally from Germany, traveling to lecture in Boston. She carries Captain George Child, a veteran steamboat commander filling in for the regular captain, Jacob Vanderbilt, who is ill. She carries Chester Hilliard, a 24-year-old passenger who will become one of only 4 survivors. She carries firemen, deckhands, stewards, a pilot, engineers. These people board at 4 o'clock on a cold Monday afternoon, bundling themselves against the January wind, trusting that the expensive tickets they purchase guarantee safe passage. They have no way of knowing that the smokestack casing is inadequately designed, that cotton bales are stored too close to the stack, that the lifeboats are improperly maintained, that crew members do not follow emergency procedures. They trust the system. The system fails them. On that Monday evening, the first mate notices the fire at 7:30 p.m. The Lexington is 4 miles off Eaton's Neck on the north shore of Long Island. Crew members grab buckets and boxes, throwing seawater onto the flames. They pull out the hand-pumped fire engine, but it is too small and too late. The fire spreads to the cotton bales. Within minutes, the freight deck becomes a wall of flame. Black smoke pours from the superstructure. Passengers on the upper decks realize something is wrong when they smell smoke and hear shouting. They rush to the railings. They see orange light reflecting off the dark water. Pilot Stephen Manchester turns the ship toward shore, hoping to beach her before the fire spreads further. The Lexington heads toward land, but the rudder control rope burns through. The ship loses steering. The fire reaches the engine room. The engine stops. The Lexington drifts, now 2 miles from shore, moving northeast away from land on the current. The crew prepares to launch the 3 lifeboats. The paddle wheel is still turning, powered by residual steam. The first lifeboat drops. The wheel catches it, smashes it to splinters. Captain Child is in that boat. He dies along with everyone else. Crew members cut the ropes on the other 2 boats, but they cut incorrectly. Both boats hit the water stern first and sink immediately. Now there are no lifeboats. Now there are 143 people on a burning ship drifting away from land in freezing darkness. Passengers throw baggage containers overboard. They throw cotton bales, hoping to use them as rafts. The cotton bales burn. The center of the main deck collapses at 8 p.m. People crowd toward the bow and stern, the only areas not yet engulfed. The heat becomes unbearable. The choices narrow to fire or water. The destruction does not end with the ship. Those who jump into the water face a different death. The air temperature is below freezing. The water temperature is 38 degrees Fahrenheit. Hypothermia sets in within minutes. Muscles seize. Coordination fails. Speech becomes impossible. Consciousness fades. Those lucky enough to grab a floating bale of cotton survive longer, but not much longer. Chester Hilliard, the 24-year-old passenger, climbs onto a cotton bale at 8 p.m. with fireman Benjamin Cox. They cling to the bale through the night. 8 hours later, Cox falls off and drowns. Hilliard survives alone in the darkness until the sloop merchant rescues him at 11 o'clock the next morning, 15 hours in the water. Pilot Stephen Manchester and about 30 others huddle at the bow until midnight, when the flames force them into the water. Manchester climbs onto a cotton bale with passenger Peter McKenna. 3 hours later, McKenna dies of exposure. Manchester survives until the merchant rescues him at noon. Fireman Charles Smith clings to the ship's rudder with 4 other men. When the ship sinks at 3 a.m., they dive into the water and climb onto a piece of the paddle wheel. The other 4 die during the night. Smith is rescued by the merchant at 2 o'clock the following afternoon, 18 hours after the fire starts. Second mate David Crowley drifts on a cotton bale for 43 hours. He washes ashore 50 miles east at Baiting Hollow, Long Island. He staggers a mile to the house of Matthias and Mary Hutchinson and collapses after knocking on the door. 4 survivors out of 143. 4 men who endure fire and ice through sheer chance and endurance. 139 others die. The human toll is measured in names and absence. Chief Engineer Cortland Hempstead, who maintains the engines, and dies in the flames or the water, his body is never recovered. Reverend Carl Fallon, the abolitionist minister, drowns. Adolphus Harnden, carrying a fortune in cash and precious metal, drowns. Captain George Child, who takes command only because the regular captain is ill, dies in the first lifeboat. The names of most passengers are not recorded. In 1840, steamboat companies do not keep comprehensive passenger lists. Families learn of deaths through newspaper reports and absences. Bodies wash ashore for weeks. Some are identified, most are not. Funeral services are held in towns across New England and New York. The newspapers call it the appalling calamity. Lithograph artist Nathaniel Currier produces a colored print depicting the burning ship surrounded by tiny figures clinging to wreckage in dark water. It becomes his first major commercial success. The image spreads across the nation. People stare at it and imagine the terror. But the image cannot convey the cold, the screaming, the slow realization as passengers understand they will die. The hours of suffering as survivors cling to debris while others around them lose their grip and slip beneath the surface. The disaster becomes a story, a cautionary tale, a tragedy to be mourned and then forgotten as the nation moves on to the next calamity. What do you think the consequences should have been for the ship's owners? Leave your thoughts below. The failed responses to the Lexington disaster follow a predictable pattern. An inquest jury convenes to investigate. They identify the primary cause: the improper conversion of the boilers from wood burning to coal burning, and combined with the inadequate design of the smokestack casing. They identify secondary causes: cotton bales stored too close to the smokestack, crew members' delay in fighting the fire, missing fire buckets, inaccessible life preservers, improperly launched lifeboats. They also condemn Captain William Tyrrell of the sloop improvement, which was less than 5 miles from the burning Lexington and never came to aid. Tyrrell later explains that he was running on a schedule and did not want to miss the high tide. The public becomes furious. Newspapers attack Tyrrell, but he faces no legal consequences. The inquest jury issues its findings and recommendations. They recommend better fire safety equipment. They recommend proper crew training. They recommend safety inspections. They recommend regulations. But recommendations are not laws. The U.S. government passes no legislation in the wake of the Lexington disaster. Cornelius Vanderbilt testifies about the seaworthiness of the ship. He defends the design. He deflects blame onto crew errors. No one is held criminally responsible. The Lexington's owners lost a ship, but they made their money back many times over during the 13 months they operated her. Attempts are made to salvage the wreck in 1842. The ship is brought briefly to the surface. A 30-pound mass of melted silver is recovered. Then the chains snap. The Lexington breaks apart and sinks back to the bottom in 140 feet of water. The gold and silver coins, the cargo, the remains of the dead, all stay down there. This keeps happening because the economic incentives make it inevitable. Steamboat companies compete on price and speed. Safety equipment costs money. Crew training costs money. Proper maintenance costs money. These costs reduce profit margins. Companies that spend more on safety must charge higher ticket prices. Passengers, unable to assess safety standards, choose the cheapest and fastest option. Companies that cut corners on safety gain competitive advantage. They operate more ships, make more money, expand their market share. Disasters are infrequent enough, measured against total voyages, that the occasional catastrophe is absorbed as a cost of doing business. The legal system does not impose sufficient penalties to change this calculation. Passengers and crew who die cannot sue. Their families can sue, but damage awards in the 1840s are modest. Insurance covers losses. The company continues. This is why disasters like the Lexington happen again and again. On July 28, 1852, the steamboat Henry Clay races another vessel on the Hudson River. The Henry Clay catches fire and burns, killing at least 49 and possibly more than 80 people. Finally, Congress acts. The Steamboat Act of May 30, 1852 requires testing of boilers, installation of safety valves, and licensing of pilots. It takes 12 years after the Lexington disaster and hundreds more deaths before the government intervenes. Even then, enforcement is weak. Even then, disasters continue. The legacy of the Lexington exists in the regulations that eventually emerge and in the 139 lives that are lost. The wreck lies today in 3 sections on the bottom of Long Island Sound. Divers occasionally visit the site. Artifacts are recovered, pieces of the paddle wheel, sections of the hull, personal items from passengers whose names we will never know. The disaster changes maritime law, but only after years of delay and additional tragedies. It demonstrates the failure of self-regulation in industries where profit motive conflicts with public safety. It shows how economic pressures encourage risk-taking that shifts costs onto workers and passengers. It reveals how the absence of accountability allows negligence to flourish. The lesson is simple but difficult to accept. Markets do not spontaneously generate safety. Safety requires regulation, enforcement, penalties severe enough to change behavior. Safety requires valuing human life more than quarterly profits. The Lexington's passengers and crew board that ship on a cold January afternoon, trusting that someone, somewhere in the chain of owners and builders and regulators, has ensured the vessel is safe. That trust is misplaced. They pay with their lives. 139 people die because a boiler conversion is done improperly, because cotton is stored carelessly, because lifeboats are not maintained, because crew members are not trained, because no one wants to spend the money to fix problems that might never become catastrophes. Until they do. The fire spreads, the ship burns, people jump into freezing water. 4 survive through luck and endurance. 139 do not. We remember them not with monuments or annual ceremonies, but with the regulations written in their blood, regulations that take 12 years to enact and remain imperfect even today. We remember them by telling this story, by keeping the names alive when we can, by understanding that industrial progress built on human sacrifice is not progress at all. The Lexington burns on January 13, 1840, and takes 139 souls into the dark water. They deserve to be remembered. Their deaths demand we learn. If you appreciate these deep investigations into forgotten tragedies, please subscribe and share this video. These stories matter. These lives mattered.